और जब से हसनैन के बाबा से सुना है ये कलाम कि मुझको अब कोई मदीने में नहीं करता सलाम, तब से ये हाल है मेरा, अपने गम भूल के बाबा, बस मुझे फिक्र अली है। तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है, तेरी उम्मत ने बना दी है ये हालत बाबा, कि कोई पसली भी नहीं मेरी सलामत बाबा। सांस लेती हूँ मैं जिस दम, घुटने लगता है मेरा दम, सिर्फ मरने की कमी है। तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है, और हाथ में जिसके मेरा हाथ दिया था तुमने, कह के मन को तो जिसे मौला कहा था तुमने, मैंने हर मोड़ पे बाबा साथ उसका है निभाया। हाँ मेरा जुर्म यही है, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है, और शर्म आती है भला तुमको बताऊं कैसे, ये तमाचों के निशान तुमको दिखाऊं कैसे, तुम न पहचान सकोगे देख कर मुझसे कहोगे, क्या मेरी ज़हरा यही है। तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है, और कभी दरबार में पेशी को बुलाते हैं हमें, तो कभी दरवाजे पे आके सताते हैं हमें। मेरे ये भूल से बच्चे पूछते हैं यही मुझसे, क्या खता हमसे हुई है। तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है, हाय बाबा तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है।
Jazakumullah khair, Brother Zain. Now, before I call up Sheikh, I would like to request everyone to please move one row forward. Please, there's a lot of empty space in the back over there as well for their brothers. So please come up in the front so the people that come late, they can fill in those gaps. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, I'd like to take a few moments to introduce everyone about Sheikh. So, Sheikh Mountather Al-Karbalei was born in the holy city of Karbala. He moved to Ottawa, Canada in 1992. He pursued an undergrad degree in civil engineering at the University of Ottawa, graduated with honors with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. During his undergrad, he participated and was part of the Thaqalain Muslim Association and ran as president for 2 consecutive years. Following his academic degree, his love for knowledge took him to Karbala, where he studied in the Islamic seminary under the guide of several esteemed scholars in various fields. He continues to pursue religious studies today alongside his full-time employment as a transportation engineer. He has been serving the pulpit and speaking for over 10 years around various centers in Canada and the US. He has also done several programs with Imam Hussein TV, from live shows to full documentaries. Now, without further ado, I would like to call upon Sheikh Mountather to come up and bless us with his words of wisdom. Please welcome him with a loud salawat.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. الثاني على حب الحسن والحسين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. One loud salawat in honor of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وأعز المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين شفيع ذنوبنا وحبيب قلوبنا المصطفى الأمجد حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. الله وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الهداة المهديين أفضل الصلاة والتسليم واللعن الدائم الأبدي السرمدي على منكري فضائلهم ومناقبهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين رب العالمين. صلى الله عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. صلى الله عليك يا أبا الحسن. صلى الله عليك يا أول مظلوم. Few words of poetry to begin. These words were recited or were written by Sayyid Al-Himyari Ridwanullahi Ta'ala alayh. He says in describing the crime that Ibn Muljam committed when he struck Amir al-Mu'mineen. لا در در المراد الذي سفكت كفاه مهجة خير الخلق إنسانا. No, may the one who killed the heart of the best of creation, mankind, never prosper. قد صار مما تعطاه بضربته مما عليه من الإسلام عريانا. He has become, through this strike that he delivered, one who stripped Islam of its covering. أبكى السماء لباب كان يعمره منها وحنت عليه الأرض تحنانا. He made the heavens weep for a door that was once filled with light from it, and the earth itself lamented him. طورا أقول ابن ملعونين ملتقط من نسل إبليس بل قد كان شيطان. At times I say, he is a cursed one, a descendant of Iblis. In fact, he was the devil. لا عاقر الناقة المردي ثمود لها رب أتوا سخطه فسقا وكفرانا. He was no different than the one who caused the she-camel of Thamud to miscarry, bringing wrath from their Lord through their wickedness and disbelief. ولا ابن آدم قابيل اللعين أخو هابيل إذ قربا لله قربانا. Nor like the son of Adam, the cursed Qabil, who killed his brother Habil after they both offered sacrifices to God. بل المرادي عند الله أعظمهم خزيا وأشقاهم نفسا وجثمانا. Indeed, the Muradi ibn Muljam in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most disgraceful and the most wretched in soul and body. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali. My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to begin first and foremost by extending my condolences to Sahib al-Amr. May my soul be ransomed for him on this tragic occasion that marks the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Mawla al-Muwahhideen wa Ya'asub al-Deen wa Qa'id al-Ghurr al-Muhajjalin. And to you I also extend my condolences on these tragic nights. And I would also like to extend my thanks to the dear brother who recited and reminded us of something very important. I wanted to say this before I begin, in that what he said concerning the heart of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam and the loss of Sayyidah Fatima. And as you're aware that Imam Ali alayhi salam, after Sayyidah Zahra, he uttered those words saying, إِنَّمَا حُزْنِي لَسَرْمَدْ, that my sadness is never ending. So just to think about, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam during these nights, is he excited to go back to Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam in a way, because now he gets to reunite with Sayyidah Fatima and his sadness can now come to an end. But it's just very difficult because he lived all his life amongst individuals who had a hand in breaking the ribs of Fatima and killing his unborn child. So thank you very much for that reminder. I really appreciate that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, in the next couple of nights, we will be covering the Ziyara of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. The Ziyara that is found in the books of Dua and Supplication, which is specifically the Ziyara on the day of Ghadir. Now, an introduction as to why we are doing this, so that everybody has an understanding of why we are approaching this theme, inshallah ta'ala. You see that in these nights of Shahri Ramadan and in the nights of Sha'ban and nights of Rajab, I mean throughout the year, we have all these treasures from dua literature and ziyarah literature, and sadly it's literature that is untapped. It's a hidden treasure. It's a gold mine that is right there in front of us. Yet you find that we more or less interact with the literature not in a way that was intended for us to interact with. Yes, we understand that there is merit and reward in reading said literature, interacting and visiting the Imam. I mean, as soon as you say Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam wa alayka as-salam, right? You say peace be upon you, the Imam right away answers, and peace be upon you too. But at the same time, have we ever thought to ask for a second, why is it that Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, for example, in this ziyarah we will look at, spends more than 3 pages addressing Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam with things that if you pay attention to this ziyarah, you can draw an entire outline of the history of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Prophet from the beginning until the end of his life, and all the manaqib, all the merits, all the fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the ones that even matter, all of them you find ingrained in the ziyarah. All the sacrifices found in the ziyarah, right? But we read it and we don't practice tadabbur, right? And it seems that even Allah was aware of this in the Quran when He mentions it, right? When He said, فَلَا يَسْتَبِّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ أَقْفَالُهَا. That most people tend to not spend time to contemplate on the Quran and the message of the Quran and the meanings of the Quran. Again, we read the Quran, Quran is treated the exact same way. The same way that the ziyarah literature and dua literature, the Quran is treated as a book that we might open through the year. But of course, in Shahr Ramadan, we try to make sure we finish all 30 juz', right, of the Quran, because we want to make sure we scratch that. It's nothing wrong with that. But imagine if you spent the whole month of Quran analyzing Surah Yasin. That's it. Or the whole month of Quran analyzing Surah Al-Qadr or analyzing Surah Al-Kawthar and spending more time asking the questions, looking at the language, right? Tadabbur in the Arabic language, tadabbur means, it comes from the root word dubur, which means the back or the end, which translates as looking at the end or the consequences of something, right? So when you come across the verse in the Quran, for example, that speaks to the punishment of those before us, مثلا, from the different nations, right? Tadabbur would be you asking, so why was it that the people of Noah were annihilated in this fashion? Why was it that the people of Abraham, why was it that the people of Moses? That's tadabbur, asking those questions, why, right? And that's what we're trying to do right now. We want to use this practice of tadabbur by opening up the ziyarah literature, getting more ingrained with the ziyarah literature, and seeing what can we extract. Can we maybe learn about some historical significance in the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam? Again, Imam al-Hadi is a ma'soom imam. The ziyarah is not coming from myself. I'm not sitting here and telling you this is how you should visit Amir al-Mu'min on the day of Ghadir, right? Imam al-Hadi makes his way towards the haram of Amir al-Mu'mineen and stands in front of the haram and he utters these words, right? Similarly, when you go to Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam, may Allah inshallah grant us all the ziyarah of Karbala, right? When you read the ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada, especially like Ziyarat Ashura and Ziyarat Warith, Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq have passed this down to us. Or when you come to the ziyarah of Al-Abbas alayhi salam, Imam al-Sadiq, who was a ma'soom imam, who is greater than Abu Fadl al-Abbas, stands in front of Abu Fadl and he begins by saying, Salamullahi wa salamu malaikati al-muqarrabina wa anbiya'i al-mursalina wa zakiyatu al-tayyibat. He continues, just the salam takes 2 or 3 sentences. Peace of Allah, of the angels, of all of creation, everything be upon you, O Al-Abbas. Right? Imam al-Sadiq is saying this. That's the first thing we should ask. That this is a ma'soom imam saying this, so this should have some sort of meaning. That it's not just a text. Yeah, for some people, the capacity for them is, it's a text that I interact with my imam, which is fine. But we are all here people of learning, and we all want to learn more, right? So that's why we want to interact, right? As I was talking to one of the brothers, that the goal, right? The goal behind these 3 nights is for everybody to leave here saying why, right? More than even what we're going to learn right now. We might learn something new. It might be a reminder. But for me, my main goal is that everybody goes back, and especially these nights of Qadr, is to interact. Like the questions we had in our Quran tracing and learning is, why was Surah Al-Rum on Layt al-Qadr? Why, right? Other than the fact that it's an instruction, right, from the Imam alayhi salam, why? Of course, if you want the answer why, you have to refer to the brothers and sisters that were there in that program, because that will take us time to explain that. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, for the sake of benefit, where was this ziyarah found? In case you want to take down notes and in case you want to have it for your reference, the ziyarah can be found in this book that is called Mazar al-Mashhadi. It is a book written by one of the scholars by the name of a Sheikh Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ja'far al-Mashhadi al-Ha'iri. And he is one of our pious scholars from the Salaf, from the predecessors. And he is a man who, his teachers like Ibn Shahr Ashub, Shahaadat ibn Jibreel al-Qummi, and other individuals. And his book alone, actually, though sadly it's not distributed and circulated much in the circles, because our literature today, we refer to Fatih al-Jinan and other literature because it's easier for us. But his book is important because it is considered what we refer to as an asl. It's one of those root sources that the ulama actually refer to when it comes to ziyarah literature. Similar to the book, if you're aware of Kamil al-Ziyarat of Al-Khoei al-Qummi, this book collects everything from that and even more due to the fact that he had access to even more literature at his time. So the ziyarah is narrated there. And actually, if you go back to the ziyarah in this book specifically, you'll find that he has narrated more than 10 ziyarat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, right? 27th of Rajab, right? The ziyarah that you read on the day of Ghadir, the ziyarah that you read it, at the birth of the Imam, the ziyarah that's considered khas, the ziyarah considered am, the general, non-general ziyarah. More than 12 ziyarah, right? Some of them directly from an Imam he would mention, and some of them is how it was passed down, which usually it's passed down from a ma'soom, right? And what's beautiful about this ziyarah, which is the ziyarah, if you want to pull it out, inshallah we'll try to follow on. If you go on du'as.org, if you just write the ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen on the day of Ghadir, we're going to try our best to go through the lines. But if you're interested, the ziyarah, like I said, its reliability is in the highest status, and at the same time, it goes back actually, the chain that al-Mashhadi, his chain goes all the way back to basically one of the first representative, Imam al-Hujjah, Uthman ibn Sa'id al-Amri, and from there it's connected all the way for a short connection to Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam. Actually, Imam al-Askari says that I narrated from my father Imam al-Hadi that I heard him when we went to so that's actually how it's narrated. When they went to the shrine of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Askari says, I heard my father recite the ziyarah on this day of Ghadir. And then of course the Imam begins to recite the ziyarah as is recorded for us. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let's see what we have here. Starting off with the ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam on the day of Ghadir. So you begin by saying Assalamu ala Muhammadin Rasulullah Khatam al-Nabiyyin wa Sayyid al-Mursaleen وصفوة رب العالمين أمين الله على وحيه وعزائم أمره والخاتم لما سبق والفاتح لما استقبل والمهيمن على ذلك كله ورحمة الله وبركاته وصلواته وتحياته. This first part of the ziyarah, right? If you just spend a second right now, just a second of your time, and you look at it, you'll find that it exclusively has to do with what? With Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. You begin number one, and by this is a common theme, as you're aware, right? That when you, because we, the lovers of the Ahl al-Bayt, what do you find, right? Like for those who have been for those who go to Arba'een and stayed a bit longer after Arba'een, when it's the martyrdom of Rasulullah, what do, right? First, people are walking from Najaf to Karbala, and then in a reverse card. After that, what happens? We walk from Karbala to Najaf, right? For the Shahada of Rasulullah. Because the Iraqis say, you know what, if we could go to Saudi and walk to Medina, we would. They don't let us. So the next best thing is the brother of Rasulullah and the soul of Rasulullah. So we walked to him for his birthday, we walked to him for his mab'ath, we walked to him for his Shahada. And you see the people of Iraq and all the mu'min as well, all go where? Go to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, right? So it is not far-fetched that when you begin the ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, you begin by addressing the Prophet, right? You address the Prophet as being the final Prophet, Khatam al-Anbiya, right? That is a theological discussion, that look, he is Khatam al-Anbiya, after him there is no other Prophet. Then you establish the superiority of the Prophet. Then you also establish the fact that the Prophet is by divine selection. right? That the selection of the Prophet is not that the Prophet appointed himself, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appoints Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, right? And then it continues on that you are the opener of what is to come, and then the authority of the Prophet's mission, and then ending with divine blessings of the Prophet, right? That's how you begin the ziyarah, by specifically speaking about the merits of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and speaking about the message of Rasulullah, and so on and so forth, right? Of course, I've chosen more lines that I'm going to discuss in more detail. This is more just to get the ball rolling, inshallah ta'ala. But after that is when the ziyarah continues and takes a turn and begins speaking about Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. From here on in, it talks about everything concerning Imam Ali alayhi salam. Look, Assalamu ala anbiya Allah, so you send your peace and blessings upon all the prophets and messengers, right? And then after that, you begin to say Sayyid al-Wasiyyin, Warith al-Ilm al-Nabiyyin, Huwi Rabb al-Alameen. All of these qualities of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And just that, by the way, you might read it, Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. We say that all the time, right? It might not mean anything special, but understand that Imam al-Hadi, when he is saying Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, because that title of Amir al-Mu'mineen is only applicable to Ali ibn Abi Talib and nobody else. And that is why Ali ibn Abi Talib and the Imam themselves have said, whoever claims this title is a liar. Anybody in history, if you see they call themselves Amir al-Mu'mineen, that is a false attribution. The Imams themselves of the Ahl al-Bayt, there are traditions, by the way, where Imam al-Sadiq would be sitting with a group of individuals from his companions, and one person once entered the door and he said, Assalamu alayka ya Amir. The Imam got up. The Imam was furious. He said, don't use that name. That name is only applicable to Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib, and that is all, right? So when you say Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you should also have that in your thought process, that there is only one Amir al-Mu'minin and everybody else is a false Amir. The only commander of the faithful is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And then of course you speak about him being the master of successors and so on. All of these qualities, all of them are important qualities. Imam Ali alayhi salam, all of them also we can trace their the Prophet saying these back in history and in the sayings and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What I wanted to do is go right after those lines finish. You say Assalamu alayka ayyuha an-naba'ul azim alladhi hum fihi mukhtalifun wa anhu yus'alun. Right? I want to spend a bit more time on this ziyarah in this line in the ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Right? So again, right away you can see here that Imam al-Hadi is what? Is referencing what? The ayah from Surah Al-Naba, right? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amma يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون. Right? That's the ayahs basically that the Imam is referring to. So this is number one, the first lesson right here. That without even now going to the hadith literature, you can kind of get an understanding that the Naba al-Azim is Imam Ali alayhi salam. And it seems that there's a dispute, and you can almost build a picture now without even getting further on. You've already built the picture in your head. Because for those who know their history, you know there's always been a dispute, right, over Imam Ali alayhi salam's wilayah. But let's look a bit more and look at what Naba means linguistically. What do some of the mufassirin say, and just to try to get a better understanding of the application of it being Imam Ali alayhi salam, because you'll find that some people say no, it's not Imam Ali alayhi salam, due to the fact that we'll get into it inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So an-Naba in the Arabic language, this is straight from the linguists. This is what the linguists are saying. This is not coming from, any bias. An-Naba is خبر ذو فائدة عظيمة يحصل بها علم أو غلبة ظن. Naba in the Arabic language is a report that carries significance through which knowledge is attained or one doubt, right, is broken, or basically doubt is solved, right? ولا يقال الخبر في الأصل نبأ حتى يتضمن هذه الأشياء. That something cannot be a naba unless it either is clear knowledge, clears a doubt, right? Or is something that has a significance in it. That's what Naba is. And you'll find that the Arabs, when they use the word Naba, they would be very careful, right? Naba versus Khabar. Khabar can be any news. But when it comes to Naba, it has to be something that is weighty, holds significance, and has an impactful, like the information of it is considered to be impactful. That's one. Another definition here from the linguists, they say, وحق الخبر الذي يقال فيه نبأ أن يتعرى عن الكذب كالتواتر. He says, and the report, when something is called the naba, it must be free from what? It must be free from falsehood. It must be mutawatir. Mutawatir meaning what? Meaning that the report, so many people have reported it to the sense that it cannot be considered a lie, right? And it must be something like the report of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Or the report of the Prophet. You can refer to the Quran as Naba Azim, right? And then of course it continues, وَيَتَضَمَّنَ النَّبَأ مَعْنَى الْخَبَرْ يُقال أَنْبَأْتُهُ كَذا. Then basically the linguist says, when you say أَنْبَأْتُهُ, like I informed him, is different than أخبرته, I told him, right? Informing is different than just telling. So that by itself is naba, right? And of course you find other times in the Quran where the word naba is used. As an example, in Surah Sad 67 and 68, قُلْ هُوَ نَبَأٌ عَظِيمٌ أَنْتُمْ عَنْهُ مُعْرِضُونَ. And it's pretty interesting why this ayah in Surah Sad, that Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam mentions this verse, and then he mentions that through the turmoil of the final hours and the time of the advent of the Imam, and he actually uses this ayah and he says he is actually the Naba, and sadly you'll be turning away from him, Ruhi lahu al-fida, which is kind of what you see in the ghaiba literature, that people during that time when we're tested, sadly people were turned away from the Imam, right? And the Imam says it here, that is a loss for you, because this is the Naba of Allah and you are mu'ridun, you are casting yourself or straying away from him, right? So that's just as a side note there. But again, what do the Mufassirin say though? We know, all of us here, that the Naba al-Azim, the ultimate application is Ali ibn Abi Talib. There's no need for us to go. We'll share a narration for the sake of benefit. But what do the Mufassirin say? Other Mufassirin, from the other schools, right? Or in general, right? Because some people might be asking questions. For those who know, for example, where the surah was revealed, maybe they'll be asking, a couple of questions already, because you'll find that the surah is Meccan. We'll get to that in a second. So, what do they say? Some people say, Yawm al-Mi'ad, the day of resurrection, the day of judgment. Some say it's the Quran, and some say it refers to some of the usul of faith, your tawheed, right? And things like that, right? But more or less, the unanimous agreement is actually it's the day of judgment, because if you continue reading the other verses in the Holy Quran following this, you'll find that Allah begins to talk about blessings, then He suddenly begins to talk about the day of judgment. So most of the Mufassirin, when you ask them today, you'll be like, oh, it's the day of judgment. Anhum mu'ridun. It's sa'alun. But then there lies an issue here, and that is, the man asking this question rhetorically is that, so عَمَّ يَتَسْأَلَ النَّبَأَ الْعَظِيمَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِيهِ مُخْتَلِفُونَ. So why is it then that there is this, ikhtilaf in this matter if it's a day of judgment? So as in, if the Muslims are the Muslims are the ones asking this question, that there is this Naba al-Azim and Allah is speaking to the people, and then the Muslims are hearing this from the Prophet and saying, well, we all believe in the day of judgment. So is it that now people say, no, maybe it's not the Muslims asking these questions, maybe it's the actual kuffar, because some of them still believed, or the mushrikeen of Quraysh that still believed in a day of judgment of some sort. But you can tell that the evidence that is being presented, it's very difficult, because the fact is that you find, when it comes to the Muslims, well, they've been told that there's a mi'at, that there's a day of judgment, day of resurrection, right? Even though these things, especially that the verse is Meccan, right? Because people say the verse is Meccan, and the Meccan verses have a lot to do with the day of judgment, and have a lot to do with faith and tawheed, and things that are to happen after, things in the grave and so on, to kind of encourage and get the Muslims in a way to give them that encouragement in the beginning years of their Islam, right? And the argument that you read, I mean, I saw one mufassir say, some mushrikeen believe, and maybe that's why they're yatasa'alun, they're asking about it, but I can't see how that is, and that mufassir who mentioned it, didn't mention a source for it, but let's say that it is in fact the Day of Judgment, right? It doesn't technically take away from the fact that it could still be, that the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, right? Because the Quran has a zahir, has that apparent meaning, and it has a batin, right? And sometimes the batin can be the actual application, and the zahir could be what it was revealed for. And sometimes a Meccan verse could be revealed at one point, but then its application can come later on in Medina. And all the Mufassirin agree with this, right? And on top of that, there is this narration here that is reported that on the day of Siffin, during the battle, there was a man from the army of Siffin. He was walking and he saw a mushaf on the floor, saw a Quran on the floor, and the Quran was open on that page, عَمَّ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ, right? And Imam Ali alayhi salam came to him and said, do you know of this Naba that they differ upon? Then he said, no. He said, by Allah, I am the Naba al-Azim. And that they have disagreement upon. They disagree over my wilayah. And because my wilayah, it's because of my wilayah you returned after you had accepted. And by your transgression you perish after you were saved by my sword. On the day of Ghadir, he says, you knew. And on the day of judgment, you will come to know. So that line right there, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he's saying, on the day of judgment, you will come to know what this Naba is, that I am the Naba, right? So if you take that word by itself, just those lines from Imam Ali alayhi salam, that he's saying here, that on the day of judgment, you will come to know what you had known, it makes a lot more sense that there is a connection, and as you all know, there's a connection between that day of judgment and the hisab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the wilayah in which you will be asked about, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran countless times says, ثُمَّ يَتْسَأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. On that day, right? Surah Al-Takathur, verse number 8. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, on that day, you will be asked about what? About the na'im, right? And we know from other verses in the Quran, right? Like the verse of Ikmal al-Din, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي. That I have completed my blessing upon you here. The blessing in the Quran always refers back to Amir al-Mu'mineen. On that day, we're asked about the wilayah of Imam Ali alayhi salam, right? And in this verse of the wilayah that's currently that we're living in, not just the Muslims, by the way, and the kuffar at that time, but even till now, this عَمَّ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ النَّبَإِ الْعَظِيمِ is applicable till today. That we always say that we'll be asked about these in our grave. We'll be asked on the day of judgment. We'll be asked that. How is it when it comes to your obligation towards the wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib, did you seek out more than just what you have been taught? As in, did you seek out more ma'rifah when it comes to Ali ibn Abi Talib's wilayah? Did you educate yourself more when it comes to the history of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Did you seek out more answers to some questions that maybe the enemies pose when it comes to the wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib? All this is considered ma'rifah. All of this in which we are sitting down right now in this majlis is all considered ma'rifah. So we will be asked about these things. And then there was a hadith that's narrated as well, that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam mentions the same verse from Takathur, verse number 8, right? ثُمَّ يَتْسَأَلُونَ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ, that you'll be asked about the na'im. And he goes to Abu Hanifa and he says to Abu Hanifa, what does this verse mean? Abu Hanifa says, yeah, Allah will ask me about my food and drink and my cold water they'll be drinking. Imam al-Sadiq says, so you're telling me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment will sit and ask you, you drank this and you ate this, and begin to list all the food, that you ate from your entire lifetime? He says, by Allah, we are the na'im. We are the ones who will be asked about on the day of judgment. How did you fulfill your obligation towards us, the Ahl al-Bayt? Is it just by saying Ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyallah, or was it Ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyallah accompanied with that, action, right? accompanied with the fact that I'm not just going to sit here and listen to what my parents have told me. I'm going to seek further to understand more about my faith. I'm going to seek further to understand more about this beautiful religion of mine and the sacrifice of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So that right there, we address Imam Ali alayhi salam as a Naba al-Azim alladhina hum fihi mukhtalifun. Which is kind of beautiful because if you didn't go to the narrations, you can open a book, right? There's plentiful narrations about the Naba being Ali. Let's say you left all of those aside. All you need to do is read that line right there and connect it. That look, he is the one that people have disagreement upon, right? That people will begin to ask about the wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Just from a line of Ziyarat, we were able to go to and find the tafsir of these three verses from Surah An-Naba. Now the next couple of lines from the Ziyarat, inshaAllah, is the ones where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the iman of Ali ibn Abi Talib, where he says, peace be upon you, Amir al-Mu'mineen, amanta billah wahum mushrikun, right? وَصَدَقْتَ بِالْحَقِّ وَهُمْ مُكَذِّبُونَ وَجَاهَدْتَ فِي اللَّهِ وَهُمْ مُحْجِمُونَ, right? In these couple of lines, you find that you mentioned other facts about Ali ibn Abi Talib. Who was the first person to believe in the Prophet? First amongst the men was who? Ali. The first amongst the women who? Khadija alayhi salam, right? This is what you're doing here. You're testifying to that historical reality and that fact that Ali ibn Abi Talib was the first. Whoever says otherwise, says otherwise. This is the fact. And the fact that while others from Quraysh, from close family members who decided to not follow the truth of the Prophet, no, you were truthful when it came, while others falsified Rasulullah. You stood with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, while others falsified the Prophet. And you are the only one who on your hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted victory to who? To the Muslims. In how many battles? Can we even begin to name them? Right? Badr and Hunayn and Ahzab and Khandaq. The only name that keeps on coming is the name of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So when you speak about the early Muslims and the wealth of Khadija, because for that we are grateful, and without Khadija alayhi salam's contributions we will not be here today. There is no Islam without Khadija, but there's also no Islam to the jihad of Ali ibn Abi Talib. When other Muslims were running away from the battle, Imam Ali alayhi salam was first and foremost inside the battle, right? And getting all of these, wounds so that the Prophet is not wounded, right? People are running away and Ali ibn Abi Talib is there. How many countless times do you have to talk about Hunayn when only 8 to 9 people stayed, or 7 to 8 people, stayed with the Prophet when all the Muslims ran away? Who was it? Again, the foremost person in front of the battle was Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. That's what that jihad is. And inshallah, we will be talking more about the jihad of Ali, because there's more than one verse in the Ziyarah that speaks about the jihad and the ghazawats of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So we want to leave a special night just for that, inshallah ta'ala. And then this whole thing also about the fact that, the mushrikeen, right? The conquest of Mecca, again. And every time you open up a book, and you want to read about history, you cannot but come across the name of Ali alayhi salam. You can't. It's impossible. Try your best. Try your best. You can't. He will always be there. They tried to hide it, but he will always be there. The conquest of Mecca, 10 years after Hijrah, right? When the Muslims entered Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ, as the hadith says, he had a stick and he began to break the idols of Mecca, right? It is said, as Bukhari narrates from Abu Hurairah, that there was an idol on top of the Kaaba, right? And when they wanted to go on top, Rasulullah comes to Ali ibn Abi Talib. First he says to him, come on my shoulders so you can go on top, so you can break the idol. Imam Ali said, no, I cannot do that. So then Rasulullah says, you know what, we'll do it your way then. And when Rasulullah wanted to go on the shoulders of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he couldn't. Imam Ali said, the way of Rasalah is too heavy. Then Imam Ali changed his mind. And then again, Imam Ali goes on the shoulders of the Prophet, on top of the Kaaba, brings the idols and breaks them. Puts them all and breaks them. Again, the hands of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Very well known story. no matter what you do, you come across the history of Islam, you'll come across these things. And this was the biggest victory. Finally now, the Muslims are able to actually do Hajj, when before that it was very difficult for them. Now imagine Rasulullah had to come back to his hometown in that state, right? It wasn't long after that until his martyrdom. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And then lastly, we would like to look if you go a couple more lines, it talks about jihad and so on. And then it talks about وَعَبَدْتَ اللَّهَ مُخْلِصًا لَهُ الدِّينَ صَابِرًا مُحْتَسِبًا حَتَّى أَتَاكَ الْيَقِينَ أَلَا لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ. And you worshipped Allah with full sincerity to Him in obedience while you were steadfast, depending upon Him totally until death came upon you. Here is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and here is when Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salam is describing the worship of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And especially that whole aspect of Imam Ali being sabr, of being patient. As we mentioned, that it takes a lot of patience to go what he went through. Like when he begins to talk about himself sometimes, when he would just be reminiscing, he would always say things like, I'm the most oppressed after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I remained oppressed. Because think about it, during the Prophet's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet was there, so if they tried anything, the Prophet could always interject, right? So whoever tried to stand in front of him or say something, the Prophet was there. They had some respect. I'm not going to say full respect, some respect, right? When it came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But when after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was martyred and put in his grave, well, it didn't take much long. The body of the Prophet is still fresh, right? And you would think that, if these individuals truly, right, if the Sahaba that truly loved the Prophet and say we love him, shouldn't you then be busy with his burial instead of bickering next to the Prophet? Right? Because it's not that far away. For those who have been to Medina, when I first went to Medina, and I saw how close the Saqifa of Bani Sa'ida is to the mosque of the Prophet, I was confused. I did not know how close it was. Right? You always read about it, right? The Prophet's mosque, Saqifat Bani Sa'ida, there was fitna happening, there was yelling, Minna Amirun Munkan Amir, Sa'ad ibn Ubadah, and so on, all this stuff. And you find that it's not that far away. You can stand, you can see the dome of the Prophet where he's buried, and you can pan your eyes and you'll see Saqifa Bani Sa'ida right there, right? And we know that we had to have utmost respect when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many times does He address the Muslims? Guys, in front of the Prophet, do not raise your voices. If you do so, all of your deeds will become fruitless. Right? As Allah says in Surah Al-Hujurat, do not call the Prophet, the same way you call amongst yourselves. You speak to your brother in one way, okay, that's your brother. When it comes to the Prophet, don't say Ya Muhammad. Right? Say Ya Rasulullah. Allah doesn't address him with Ya Muhammad. Only a couple of times. You barely find Allah does not address the Prophet in this way. You think we can address the Prophet in that way? And of course, all this bickering is happening. His body is still fresh, right? And what happened to the respect and the hurma, the sanctity of the Prophet? But of course, even when you go to Medina today, you'll find they inherited this from their forefathers, right? That you try to visit the Prophet and there's yelling and pushing and shoving. Well, the funniest thing is the ayah of Surah Al-Hujurat is right there. لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي. It's legit, just right. It's right there. You can go look at pictures online. You'll see the grave right on top. The verses from Surah Al-Hujurat are in a plaque, and they're yelling and they're screaming, right? And where is the respect that you call? This respect you have towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When you come to Medina, you should be in a state of tranquility and peace. You should put your head down. You should be respectful as if the Prophet's right there in front of you. Out of respect, you put your head down, you walk to him. As we have in our ziyarah literature, as the Imams, when they visit Rasulullah, They tell us that you walk with your heads down, you say Allahu Akbar 34 times, and then you say وَإِنَّهُمْ إِنْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ جَاءُوكَ فَاسْتَغْفِرُوا اللَّهَ وَاسْتَغْفِرُوا لَهُمُ الرَّسُولُ. You recite that ayah in the Quran that if they have oppressed themselves, you recite the ayah, you go, Allah, I've oppressed myself, so I have come to the Prophet to seek forgiveness. So, O Prophet, pray for me. So if you pray for me, Allah will forgive me. And then we address the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In our ziyarah literature, right? We address the Prophet in this way, in this beautiful ziyarah that the Imams alayhim salam passed down to us. So where is the respect? I do not know, right? But what can we say? Let's go back to this. Sabran muhtasiban, patience. Imam Ali alayhi salam is the epitome and the embodiment and the manifestation of sabr. Right? As we mentioned, the masa'ib concerning Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. But the whole life was masa'ib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. But what about this ibadah of Ali ibn Abi Talib, right? Just a quick story, inshallah, as we conclude, is that one day Abu Darda, the companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi alayhi, was in a majlis sitting with some Sahaba, it seems, and they were talking about different things in this majlis. They were mentioning different things about individuals who sacrificed their lives and, early Muslims. And Abu Darda lived a very long life. So Abu Darda, being the person that he is, he said, what are these guys talking about? Okay. Nobody is speaking about Ali ibn Abi Talib. Let me plug Ali ibn Abi Talib in this. He says that, what about Ali ibn Abi Talib? I have not seen anybody like him in ibadah. They looked at him and like, oh Umaywar, you have uttered a statement that no one seems to agree with. Because as soon as he said that, they're like, what are you talking about? Ali ibn Abi Talib? And then this guy says, look, you have uttered a statement, nobody seems to agree with you. He's like, okay, you don't agree with me? Let me narrate to you what I saw. He said, I recount this for you. I have witnessed this, right, in my own eyes, that one day Ali ibn Abi Talib had went to do ibadah in a specific place, in this specific region or valley, and he had distanced himself from me, so I was paying close attention to him, right? Imam Ali alayhi salam would go in sujood, and he would recite some prostration, some dua. He would begin to cry. He would go back up in prostration, and then he would again repeat several lines of dua. We don't have time to recount, but beautiful lines in the dua. Abu Darda says he would continuously doing this until suddenly, while in prostration, it's as if he just fell unconscious right there during those moments. I came to him and I was moving him, telling him, wake up, wake up. He's not moving. I began to say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi alayhi has passed. And then he goes to the house of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, and he says that this has happened. Ali has passed. Ali has passed. She's like, this is one of those conditions that happens to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, that when he is in a ibadah, he passes out unconscious due to his piety, right, and his love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the family of Ali comes and they put some water on his face, and Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam wakes up from ibadah, and he sees Abu Darda crying, of course, and then Imam Ali alayhi salam begins to console him with some words of wisdom. That was the ibadah of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And all these people in the majlis were, confused. It was their first time hearing this, right? Which is quite sad, because sometimes, when people are very strong when it comes to politics, as we know, the politics of Muawiyah were very strong politics. Muawiyah's politics in Sham were unmatched when it comes to Ali ibn Abi Talib, right? As you're all aware, when Ali ibn Abi Talib, when the news reached Sham that Imam Ali, Ruhi lahu al-fida, Imam Sobi, ransomed for him, was killed in Salah, وَهَلْ يُصَلِّي Ali. That was the first response. And does Ali even pray? أعوذ بالله استغفر الله العظيم. But look, when propaganda works its way and it gets very deep, and now what do we see? The same tactics of Muawiyah is still happening today. Like you come across the videos online of some of the statements these people say. It's disheartening. They say that, I will kill you all you Shia, even your youngest baby. Like the things, the way they describe. So, you know, like when you say that the sons of Yazid still exist today, right? When somebody asks, Imam al-Mahdi will come back and he will begin to, seek the blood of Abdullah by killing these people. Well, they exist today right in front of us. They are publicly admitting that if we would do it. Let us come to you, O Shia. We will do it anytime. These are the politics. Till now, the politics of Muawiyah and Yazid still exist till now. And at that time, of course, it was even more tragic. Imagine. This is the greatest creation after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. This is the only man in history who has ever uttered the statement, Is'aluni qabla an tafquduni. Ask me before you lose me. Right? Ask me about the paths of the heavens. I am more aware than them than the paths of the earth. Nobody in history. You tell me, bring one other person in history that's ever uttered these words. Nobody. Right? This is the man, the propaganda came to the point, like we said, to the people did not believe in the fact that Imam Ali alayhi salam prays. And then on a night like this, on the 19th of Shahri Ramadan, in the month of Allah, the month of fasting, Imam Ali alayhi salam has to leave this world in these couple of days, right? And we always never, again, these are some scenes that I want to leave with you, that you'll find that on the day of Eid, right? All of us, inshallah, right? We have our loved ones here, and we're going to meet each other, we're going to celebrate, and we're going to be happy. But the fact is, I just want you to keep this in mind, and inshallah we'll mention this again on the last night of the Shahaadat of the Amir. But I just want you to just think of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam only for the next couple of days, for the next week if you can, or even for the next couple of hours. I just want you to think of Zainab al-Kubra, and I want you to think of Kulthum. I want you to think of the daughters of Amir al-Mu'mineen right now. 19th, right? 19th. On that night of the 19th of Shahri Ramadan, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was where? In the house of Kulthum alayhi salam. Right? In the house of Kulthum. Every day Imam Ali alayhi salam would go to one of the houses of his children. This was the night that was specific for who? For Kulthum alayhi salam. Right? He goes in, his daughter prepares for him some food. And as you're aware, she presented him a plate, and had more than 2 dishes on a plate. Said, when have you ever seen your father break his fast with 2 dishes, right? Leave one, and let me just break my fast with some salt and bread, right? And then he would constantly look at the heavens. He said, this is the night that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi promised me. In that khutbah, remember the khutbah of Shahr Sha'ban, the end of Sha'ban, when Rasulullah gave us khutbah, what did he say? He begins talking about Ramadan and everything, and then he begins telling him that in this month, O Ali, is when the blood of your head will smother your beard. And then when Imam Ali alayhi salam asked him, will my faith be okay? He said, yes, your faith will be okay. This is the night that my Habib Rasulullah promised me, right? He would go do his salah and enter, right? And then of course when he tried to make his way, he would leave the door, and the first thing he would say is Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And as some reports say that, there was these ducks or these birds that were gifted from Al-Hasan alayhi salam that started flapping their wings when Imam Ali alayhi salam wanted to leave the house of Kulthum. All of creation, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, does not want you to go to the mosque. Everybody, O Ali, wants you to stay. You are our father, all of us. So even the animals are recognizing that this is the final night that they will look upon the face of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And then as it says, as he's exiting, Ya Mu'mineen, his cloth gets, stuck in the handle of the door, as if the cloth is saying, don't leave. Then he recites these words of poetry. I strengthen your determination for death, for indeed death is coming to meet you, and do not be distressed by death, for it comes to fulfill its call to you. Just as time made you laugh, so too time will make you weep. Then he said, Oh Allah, bless us in death. Oh Allah, bless us in meeting you, Ya mu'mineen. The Imam walked to the mosque and prayed the Nafila prayer. He ascended the pulpit and called the adhan. He would check of those who were asleep in the mosque, saying, As-salah, As-salah, rahimakumullah, may Allah have mercy on you. This is the wajib obligatory prayer. Wake up for salah. During this moment, he sees Ibn Muljam sleeping on his face with a sword hidden under his garment that has been drenched in poison. The Imam said to him, Oh, wake up from this sleep, for it is a sleep detested by Allah. Sleep on your right side, for it is the sleep of the scholars, or your left side, for it is the sleep of the wise, or sleep on your back, for it is the sleep of your prophets. Then he tells him, you are planning something, Ya Ibn Muljam. If you were to act upon it, the earth and the heavens will burst and shake. Then he left and went towards prayer. Ya mu'mineen. Imam alayhi salam recited the takbir. The Imam recited saying Allahu Akbar. The Imam does his qira'ah. He recites his qira'ah. He does his ruku'. He does his sujood. Ibn Muljam stood up hastily and walked towards the Imam. Stood adjacent to the pillar where the Imam was praying. He waited until the Imam raised his hands from his prayer, and then he struck him on his head. رحم الله من نادى وإماما وعليا ومظلوما. The Imam fell to the ground, bleeding heavily, saying Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. Then he said, Fushtu wa Rabbi al-Kaaba. I have succeeded by the Lord of the Kaaba. The strike, Ya mu'mineen, fell on the same strike from that day that Imam was dealt by Amr ibn Wuddin al-Amiri. The Imam tied his wound, he placed sand on his wound, and he would recite Minha khalaqnakum wa fiha nu'idukum wa minha nukhrijukum taratan ukhra. From it we created you, and into it we shall return you, and from it we shall bring you forth once again. The doors of Kufa began to bang, the heavens began to shake, the angels began to shout, Jibreel began to shout, تهدمت والله أركان الهدى وانتصم طمست والله العروة الوثقى قتل علي المرتضى. By Allah, the pillars of guidance have collapsed. By Allah, the stars of the heavens and the signs of righteousness have dimmed. By Allah, the firmest bond has been severed. In that moment, Hassan and Hussein came, and Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam continued the prayer, and your Imam alayhi salam had to continue his prayer with sighs. He could not move his head, he could not move his body. Ya mu'mineen, it is as if during those moments I see Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam going to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he says, Addamallahu laka al-ajr. My father, what are we to do after you? As if I hear Amir al-Mu'mineen saying to him, Oh Hassan, be patient, for there are days to come. Be patient, oh Hassan. Let me tell you something. First, after me, you will be the first to go. After me, you will be poisoned. But let me tell you about something, oh Hassan, about that brother of yours, Hussein Gharib al-Ghuraba. Oh Hassan, let me tell you about your brother Hussein, who will be left on the plains of Karbala 3 days with no ghusl or no kafan. Oh Hassan, let me tell you about the head of your brother Hussein that will be paraded from one city to another. Oh Hassan, let me tell you one more thing, oh Hassan. One more thing, oh Hassan, but control yourself. let me tell you about your sister Zainab and Kulthum. She will be taken from one city to another. She will be seen by the likes of Yazid and Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. فسيعلم الذين ظلموا على بيت رسول الله أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. يا الله 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 يا الله. إلهي بحق فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها اقضي حوائج المؤمنين والمؤمنات. إلهي بحق مريضي كربلاء يا الله, by the one who was sick in Karbala, Ya Allah, whoever is in this majlis, go Allah, who was sick, grant them shifa by the one who was sick in Karbala. Oh Allah, we ask you, oh Allah, by that sword that struck Amir al-Mu'mineen, by that blood that poured on the face of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Oh Allah, I ask you, by the broken hearts of Zainab and Kulthum and Hassan and Hussein and Abbas and the children of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Oh Allah, I ask you by them to hasten in the reappearance of our Mawla Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج والعافية والنصر ومد في عمره الشريف وزين الأرض بطول بقائه واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يدي تحت لوائه والآخذين بثأر جده المولى سيد الشهداء وبجده أمير المؤمنين وبجدته مولاة فاطمة الزهراء برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. رحم الله من قرأ السورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. Ya Ali, Mazloom Ali, the heavens weep and cry for thee. Ya Ali, Mazloom Ali, the heavens weep and cry.